The morning was bright and busy in the old courthouse in London. People were moving in and out. Some were sitting quietly waiting for their turn, while others talked softly with each other. Among them was James, a tall man dressed in the famous red uniform of the Royal Guard. His black hat stood tall on his head, and his face was calm and serious. James was well known around the palace for his careful attention and dedication. Every day he stood strong and proud, guarding the royal family in their important places. But today was not like any other day. Instead of standing proudly outside the palace gates, James found himself inside a courtroom. His usual role was to protect and serve with honor, but now he was facing something completely unexpected. The police officers had come for him, and soon they handcuffed him in front of everyone. The sound of metal clicking echoed softly in the quiet room, drawing the attention of all the people present. No one had seen this coming. The lawyers stopped their conversations, and even the judge paused, looking surprised. Some people whispered, their voices low, but full of curiosity. Why was the royal guard being treated this way? What had he done? James did not answer their questions. He stood still, his eyes straight ahead, not showing any fear or anger. Inside, he felt a mixture of calm and confusion. He knew that he had done nothing wrong, yet here he was, handcuffed and watched closely. The police officers were serious and careful. They followed their orders, but they did not explain much. To them, James was just another person to handle. Nothing more, nothing less. They did not know who he really was, or the life he had lived before wearing the red uniform. The courtroom was full of people, but everyone was quiet, sensing something unusual in the air. James remembered the moment when the officers first came to him. It was earlier that morning near the courthouse entrance. He was waiting to give his testimony in a small case related to a minor incident at the palace. Suddenly, two officers approached and asked for his identification. James showed his Royal Guard badge and his ID card. They looked at the cards carefully, then exchanged a quick look between them. Without much explanation, they gently but firmly placed handcuffs on his wrists. James's mind raced, but his face stayed calm. He had been through difficult times before and knew how to control his emotions. The officers told him to follow them, and he obeyed quietly, walking through the hallways past many curious eyes. Some people stared openly. Others tried not to look, feeling unsure about what was happening. The story of James's arrest quickly spread through the courthouse. Some believed it must be a mistake. How could a royal guard, someone who protected the royal family, be treated like a criminal? Others were not so sure and waited to hear the full story. The judge finally called for order and asked the officers to explain. But the explanation was short and vague, only saying there was a case of mistaken identity that needed to be checked. Despite the confusion, James never raised his voice or protested. He stayed respectful and patient. In his heart, he knew the truth would come out, but he also understood how easy it was for people to judge without knowing all the facts. The room was tense, but James remained steady, showing the strength of a man who had faced many challenges in his life. Outside the courtroom, a few people who knew James personally began to whisper among themselves. They spoke of his past, though few outside the palace had heard the details. Before becoming a royal guard, James had served his country in a very different way. He was once part of an elite group of soldiers called the Special Air Service, or SAS, known for their skill and bravery in dangerous missions. James had been a sniper, one of the best, with years of service that required great courage and focus. However, James had never talked about this part of his life openly. He had chosen a quieter path after leaving the military. Serving as a royal guard was his way to continue protecting his country, but in a peaceful and honorable role. Now, seeing him handcuffed and questioned, those who knew his story felt a deep sadness and confusion. How could someone who had given so much be treated like this? Inside the courtroom, James's hands were still cuffed, but his mind was calm. He remembered his training in the SAS, where discipline and control were the most important skills. Even in the toughest situations, he learned to stay focused and calm. This moment was hard, but not impossible. He looked around the room and saw the mixed faces of people, some showing sympathy. Others filled with doubt. A young lawyer who had worked with James tried to speak up, explaining who he was and what he had done for the country. But the noise of the courtroom made it hard for her to be heard clearly. The officers kept their duty, and the judge called for a short break to review the documents and evidence. Everyone waited quietly, wondering what would happen next. James's story was not only about the handcuffs or the confusion. It was about respect, honor, and the way people sometimes forget the sacrifices others have made. He stood as a symbol of quiet strength. A man who had served his country in the shadows and now faced a public test of patience and dignity as the courtroom waited for answers. James's calm presence reminded everyone that appearances can be deceiving. Behind the red uniform and the handcuffs was a man with a story of courage and loyalty. The people in the room began to realize that there was more to this royal guard than they had ever imagined. The morning moved slowly, with a sense of waiting and uncertainty. James stayed silent but strong, ready to face whatever came next. The handcuffs that held his wrists could not hold his spirit. The eyes of the courtroom watched closely, some with respect beginning to grow. Others still unsure but curious. What no one knew yet was that the story was about to change. Someone important was coming, someone who would see James not as a suspect, but as a hero. Till then, James remained calm, a quiet figure standing tall in the middle of a confusing and difficult day. The tension in the room grew, but James's steady heart kept beating with hope. This was only the beginning of a story that would surprise everyone and remind them of the true meaning of honor. While the courtroom waited quietly, James stood calmly, his hands still gently cuffed but his spirit unbroken. As the minutes passed, many in the room began to wonder about the man behind the red coat. Some whispered quietly, asking each other who he really was and why the police had acted so quickly to handcuff a royal guard without explaining much. What the courtroom didn't know was that James's story went much deeper than the surface. Before he was a royal guard, he had lived a very different life. For many years, James had been a soldier, but not an ordinary one. He'd been part of a secret and special group in the British Army called the Special Air Service, or SAS. The SAS was known for handling some of the most difficult and dangerous missions. Often in places where few others dared to go, James had joined the military when he was a young man. From the very start, he worked hard to learn everything he could. His trainers quickly noticed something special about him. He was patient, calm, and focused. These were the perfect qualities for a sniper. A soldier who must stay still for hours, watch carefully, and make precise decisions. James was one of the best snipers in his group. His job was important, but often dangerous. He helped protect his fellow soldiers and complete missions by quietly watching from a distance and taking careful actions when needed. Over the years, James went on many missions in different parts of the world. Some were secret, and few people knew about them. He worked in deserts, mountains, and forests. He faced tough weather and difficult conditions, but he never gave up. His focus and skills saved many lives. Despite the dangers, James kept his promise to serve with honor and courage. Yet he never spoke about these missions much. He believed that the work was important, but also private. After all, true bravery, he thought, did not need applause or recognition. After years in the military, James decided it was time to retire from active service. The long missions and stress had taken a toll on his body and mind. He wanted a quieter life, one where he could still serve his country, but in a peaceful way. That was when he became a royal guard. Standing at the palace gates, dressed in the bright red coat and tall black hat, James found a new purpose. His military discipline helped him stay calm and alert during long hours of duty. The royal family trusted him, and he felt proud to protect them in this new role. But on this day, standing in the courtroom with handcuffs on, James felt the weight of misunderstanding. The police officers who had arrested him did not know his past. To them, he was just a man caught up in a situation they were trying to solve. They had no idea he was once one of the most skilled soldiers in the country. While James waited quietly, the story of his past began to spread quietly among a few people in the courthouse. A young lawyer named Sarah, who who had seen James at the palace many times, knew the truth. She remembered how James had once shared a little about his time in the army during a chance conversation. Sarah decided to speak up. Quietly approaching the judge during the break, she told the judge about James's past service in the SAS and how highly respected he was by his commanders. She explained that James was not only a royal guard, but also a man who had given many years of his life protecting the country in very dangerous ways. The judge listened carefully, nodding with interest. Sarah's words helped remind everyone that there was more to James than the handcuffs and the courtroom drama. As Sarah spoke, more people began to understand why James had stayed so calm. His years of training had taught him patience and self-control. He had faced challenges far greater than this moment. Even when his freedom was temporarily limited, James kept his dignity and respect for the law. Inside his mind, James reflected on his past with a quiet smile. He thought about the many missions he had been on, the long hours waiting in silence, and the importance of every small decision. All of those experiences had prepared him for moments like this. He understood that sometimes people judge quickly, without knowing the whole story. Even though he was confused by the arrest, James felt no anger. He believed that justice would come, and his name would be cleared. The courtroom began to feel less tense, as those present started to see him not as a suspect, but as a man with a remarkable history. Outside the courtroom, the news of James's arrest had started to spread. Some journalists had heard about the royal guard being handcuffed and wondered about the details. But without knowing James's story, many reports were unclear. Some wrote about a possible mistake. Others speculated on reasons no one confirmed. Back inside, James waited patiently. The officers had promised to review the case carefully. They checked the paperwork and tried to find out why the mix-up had happened. It was clear that the police had mistaken James for someone else. The ID cards had some confusion, and the information had not been properly matched. While the legal team worked behind the scenes, James used the quiet moments to remember the lessons he had learned from his commanders. One lesson was especially important. Always stay calm and respectful, no matter how difficult the situation. James understood that how a man behaves in hard times says a lot about his character. The courtroom slowly began to change. Some of the people who had looked suspiciously at James before now saw him with new eyes. They realized that a person's uniform did not tell the whole story. The royal guard standing quietly with handcuffs was a man who had served in silence and with honor. For many years, as the hours passed, James's story became a lesson for everyone present. It was a reminder that behind every face is a history and a life filled with experiences. Sometimes those experiences are hidden from public view, and it takes patience and understanding to learn the truth. Finally, the moment arrived when an important visitor was about to enter the courtroom. Someone who would change the entire mood and bring clarity to the situation. This person was not just anyone. He was an admiral, a high-ranking officer who had once served with James during his military years. The admiral had heard about the incident and came to see James for himself. He knew James well and respected him deeply. The admiral's arrival brought a new sense of hope. People in the courtroom prepared to listen as the story of James's true identity was about to be revealed. James waited quietly for the admiral to speak. In that moment, he was not just a royal guard or a man with handcuffs. He was a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and patience. The courtroom was ready to see the truth. The arrival of the admiral would soon remind everyone that honor and respect are earned through a lifetime of dedication, even when no one is watching. The doors of the courtroom opened with a soft but confident sound. Everyone's eyes turned toward the entrance as a tall man in a sharp navy uniform walked inside. He wore many medals on his chest and carried himself with the calm strength of a man used to responsibility. This was Admiral Thompson, a respected leader who had served in the British Navy for many years. But more importantly, he was someone who knew James very well from a time long before. James became a royal guard. The room fell silent as the admiral made his way toward the front. Police officers, judges, and all the people in the courtroom watched closely. They could sense something important was about to happen. The Admiral stopped in front of James, who was still standing quietly with his hands cuffed. Their eyes met for a moment, and a small but meaningful smile passed between them. Admiral Thompson spoke firmly but kindly. He told the officers and the judge that James was not just any man. He reminded everyone that James had been an elite soldier, sniper in the Special Air Service, or SAS. The Admiral spoke about their time together in the military, how James had shown courage, skill, and loyalty in difficult missions. He explained that James was highly respected by his comrades and commanders alike. The officers listened carefully. They looked at James in a new light. The handcuffs suddenly seemed out of place on a man who had served his country so well. Admiral's words made it clear that James was not a suspect or a criminal, but a man who deserved respect and honor. The judge nodded slowly and asked the Admiral to provide official documents that could prove James's identity and service history. The Admiral handed over the papers without hesitation. The officers checked the documents and confirmed their authenticity. This was no ordinary man. This was a hero who had quietly protected the nation for many years. As the truth became clear, the atmosphere in the courtroom began to shift. The tension that had filled the air started to disappear. People who had watched James with suspicion now looked at him with admiration. The young lawyer Sarah felt relieved and proud. She had known James's story and was happy to see it finally. Told the handcuffs were removed with care. The metal clicked open, and James rubbed his wrists gently, feeling a sense of freedom return. He remained calm and humble, showing no anger or bitterness. Instead, he thanked the Admiral quietly and nodded to the officers, now treated him with respect. Admiral Thompson spoke once more, reminding everyone that many veterans like James live quiet lives after their service. They may not speak often of their past, but their dedication continues in different ways. James, by serving as a royal guard, still protected the country and its traditions. The Admiral encouraged the court and the police to remember this when dealing with people who may have hidden stories and sacrifices. The courtroom was filled with a new understanding. The judge apologized formally for the mistake and promised to make sure such confusion would not happen again. The officers apologized to James and thanked him for his patience and dignity. As James stepped forward, no longer handcuffed, he spoke softly but clearly. He said that he understood mistakes happen, but respect and kindness were important. He hoped that his story would remind others to look beyond appearances and learn about the true people behind the uniforms. Outside the courtroom, news of the Admiral's intervention spread quickly. Journalists and the public began to see James, not as a man wrongly arrested, but as a symbol of bravery and honor. People admired how he had handled the situation with quiet strength. The Admiral stayed by James's side for a while, offering support and friendship. He promised to help raise awareness about veterans who serve quietly after their military careers. Together, they spoke about the importance of recognizing the sacrifices made by so many who protect their country, even when no one is watching. For James, this moment was more than just clearing his name. It was a chance to share a message about respect and understanding. His calm and patient behavior during the ordeal showed the world what true courage looked like. He was proud to have served as both a soldier and a royal guard, but he was even prouder to show how a man can face injustice. With dignity, the courtroom slowly emptied. But the story of James and the Admiral remained in the hearts of those who were there. It was a story of mistaken identity turned into a powerful lesson about honor, patience, and respect. James walked out of the courthouse with his head held high. He was free, but more importantly, he was recognized for who he truly was. The people, who had doubted him now, saw the man behind the uniform, a man of courage and quiet strength. This day would be remembered not just for the mistake, but for the truth that came to light. James's story became a reminder to everyone that sometimes the most important heroes are those who do not seek fame, but serve with loyalty and heart. As James left the courthouse, the sun was shining brightly outside, and a gentle breeze seemed to carry a new hope. He knew his life would continue quietly, guarding and serving. But now, with the knowledge that his story had been heard, and in that story, the message was clear. Behind every uniform is a human being with a past, with bravery, and with a heart deserving respect. After the Admiral's powerful words and the removal of James's handcuffs, the courtroom settled into a calm but serious mood. The judge called for everyone's attention and began to explain what had really happened. It was clear that James's arrest had been caused by a mix-up, a simple but important mistake that should never have happened. The paperwork used by the police had mixed up James's name and identification with another man's. That man had been wanted for questioning. In a case unrelated to James, but because of the confusion, James was mistakenly taken into custody. The officers had acted quickly, following the information they had, but they did not realize that they were wrong. The judge expressed regret for the mistake and apologized. Openly to James, he praised James's patience and calmness during the entire incident. The courtroom, which had been full of whispers and confusion just hours before, now filled with respectful silence. James, standing tall once again, listened quietly. He had never expected his day to turn out this way, but he was relieved that the truth was clear at last. His calm and respectful nature had helped him through a difficult time. Now he wanted to use this moment to help others understand something important. Speaking carefully, James told the court that while he was glad the mistake was fixed, he wished that everyone would learn from this. He said many veterans like himself live quietly after their service without asking for attention or praise. He hoped that people would remember to treat everyone with kindness and respect, because no one knows the full story behind another person's life. His words moved many people in the room. The judge nodded, showing agreement, and the officers, who had arrested James, looked down respectfully. They understood that sometimes the world moves too fast, and mistakes happen. But the way people respond can make all the difference. The courtroom slowly began to empty, but the conversations did not stop. Lawyers and staff talked quietly about James's story and the Admiral's intervention. Many said it was a lesson in patience and honor. It reminded them that behind every uniform or title, there is a person who deserves respect. Outside, reporters gathered to hear the official statement. They learned about the mix-up and the important role James had played in both military service and as a royal guard. Many were surprised and touched by the story of a man who had faced such an unexpected challenge with dignity. James's family and friends also heard the news. They were proud of how he had handled the situation. For them, James had always been a hero, but now the world could see it too. They knew that his calm courage was a true example of strength. After the courtroom drama ended, James returned to his duties as a royal guard, but things had changed. People at the palace and around the city began to look at him with new respect. The officers who had once mistaken him now greeted him warmly. His story inspired many, and he became a quiet symbol of patience, courage, and honor. The Admiral continued. To support James, he used the story to help raise awareness about veterans who live quietly after their service. Together, they spoke at events and met with others who had similar experiences. They wanted to remind everyone that many people who protect their country do so without seeking fame or recognition. James also began to share his thoughts with others. He spoke about the importance of understanding and kindness, said that everyone faces challenges and sometimes we don't know what someone else is going through. It is important to listen and to be patient. His message touched many hearts. People started to think more deeply about how they treated others. The story of the Royal Guard who was handcuffed by mistake became a reminder that respect and honor should never be forgotten. Even though James's life was still quiet and simple, he felt a new sense of purpose. He knew that by sharing his experience, he could help others and make a small difference in the world. His past as a soldier and his present as a royal guard came together in this moment of truth. The lesson of James's story spread beyond the courtroom and the palace gates. It reached schools, community centers, and newspapers. People talked about the importance of respect for all, especially those who serve their country in any way. James's calm and steady spirit remained unchanged, continued his duties with pride and dedication. But now he carried a new message, one of hope, patience, and the power of understanding. The courtroom incident was over, but its meaning lived on. It became a story that reminded people to look beyond appearances and to honor the hidden courage in everyone. James's journey was a quiet one, but it was powerful. It showed that even in difficult times, a man could stand strong with dignity and grace. And that, sometimes, the greatest strength comes not from fighting, but from waiting patiently for the truth to be known. As the days passed, James's life returned to its peaceful rhythm, but the respect he had earned stayed with him and inspired those around him. His story was a gift to the world, a simple, true example of honor and kindness in the face of misunderstanding. After the courtroom cleared and the confusion was resolved, James returned to his duties as a royal guard, but something had changed inside and around him. The story of what had happened, how he had been handcuffed by mistake and then recognized by the Admiral, had spread quietly through the palace and beyond. People who once only saw the tall figure in the red coat now saw the man behind it. They saw the years of service, the quiet bravery, and the patience he had shown in the face of misunderstanding at the palace. His fellow guards greeted him with warm smiles and respectful nods. The officers who had mistakenly handcuffed him had reached out to apologize in person. Their words were sincere, and James accepted them graciously. For him, it wasn't about blame or anger, it was about respect and moving forward. He wanted the story to remind everyone that mistakes can happen, but how we respond makes all the difference. News of James's story reached local newspapers and then spread to wider audiences. Some journalists wrote about the incident with care, focusing on the lessons of patience and honor. Others shared the story as a reminder of how easy it is to misjudge someone based on appearance or incomplete information. Many readers found inspiration in James's calm and steady strength. One day, James received a letter from the Admiral. The Admiral thanked him for his courage and suggested they work together to support other veterans who, like James, lived quiet lives after their military service. James agreed gladly. He felt a new sense of purpose beyond guarding the palace gates, a chance to help others be seen and respected. Together, they organized meetings and talks where veterans could share their stories. These events brought people from all walks of life. They spoke about their challenges and victories, and about the importance of understanding and kindness. James often spoke quietly at these gatherings, sharing his experience from the courtroom and the lessons it taught him. He told people that respect should not depend on medals, uniforms, or titles alone. True respect comes from recognizing the humanity and sacrifice behind every person. James's words helped others see the value of patience, humility, and dignity at the palace. Life continued with its daily routines, but James carried a new light within him. His duties were just as important as ever standing guard, protecting traditions and welcoming visitors with a steady gaze. But now he felt connected to something larger, a community of people who cared for one another and valued service in all its forms. James's story became a quiet legend among the palace staff. New guards learned about him not just as a colleague, but as a symbol of honor. The royal family, who had long respected James, praised his patience and humility when they heard the full story. It reminded them of the strength and dignity that serve as the foundation of their tradition. For James, the experience had changed him in a subtle but powerful way. He understood more deeply the importance of kindness, both given and received. He knew that even when misunderstood, holding on to respect and patience could turn difficult moments into opportunities for growth and connection. One afternoon, James stood at his post outside the palace gates. A young visitor approached him with a shy smile. The boy asked about the uniform and what it meant to be a royal guard. James knelt down slightly and shared a simple message. It's about serving others, being steady when things are hard, and always showing respect no matter what. The boy nodded, inspired by the calm confidence in James's voice. For James, moments like this made all the challenges worth it. Sharing his story, his lessons, and his quiet strength was his way of giving back to the community and to the future. Though the handcuffs had been removed and the misunderstanding cleared, the impact of that day stayed with James and those around him. It became a reminder that behind every uniform is a person with a story, sometimes hidden, sometimes quiet, but always deserving of honor. James continued his life with the same dedication he had always shown. The knowledge that even in the face of mistakes and confusion, dignity and respect shine the brightest. His story became a gentle lesson for many, that courage is not just about action, but about patience, understanding, and the strength to stand tall when the world doesn't see your true worth right away. And so, James's life went on quiet, steady and full of quiet heroism. A royal guard, a former sniper, a man who had faced the unexpected with grace. His story touched hearts and reminded the world to look deeper, to be kinder, and to honor the brave in every form. Would you like me to help with anything else?